Well, good evening, everyone. This is John Haller. Sorry about that. I'm just getting some messages here about a thing on Facebook not connecting. So this is our next Prophecy Roundtable on technocracy, technology, AI, mark of the beast technology, and all things related to that. I'm joined tonight by my good friends Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, Pete Garcia, and Scott Townsend. We're going to try to make a little bit of sense of this, what's going on. I think it's an incredibly significant time that we live in. I don't think we sat down. I don't think that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 or 3 years, 1 year, well, 2 years ago, we've been doing this about a year now, that we sat down and thought, hey, we're going to do these prophecy roundtables on technocracy. I don't think any of us had that in our plans. So I'm going to try while we're doing this to connect to Facebook. But before I do that, I want to say I think we need to talk just a little bit about what's going on in Iran. As you know, the protests are going on. I'm hearing deaths in excess of 20,000 people, the protesters. Supposedly, Iran is going to, if they didn't start today, they will soon start hanging protesters. This is a very critical situation. Some X accounts that I follow that are tied to the Middle East are reporting that U.S. jets are in position over Iraq, along with possibly Israeli aircraft, to begin attacks on Iran, that they're selecting high-value targets. I do not know if that is correct, but it's a very fluid and serious situation. I have a friend that I met in Israel a couple months ago named Marzi. Marzi lived in Iran. She grew up there. She was imprisoned back in the late 2000s, around 2009. For being a Christian. She was sentenced to death by hanging and was able to make it out of there to the U.S., where she's now a U.S. citizen. But of course, she has very deep ties to the country in which she was born and raised. There's an interview with her with Jonathan Feldstein from Genesis 123 Foundation in Israel. On townhall.com. I'll try to put a link in the description tonight for that. So this is a really difficult situation. Guys, any quick comments on Iran? Then we'll ask Britt to pray for everybody there.
It's just tragic. It's really sad to see these people. They thought they were doing a good thing when they took to the streets. They didn't measure how evil the regime is at that point. This is out and out democide.
Yeah, if the numbers are correct, at 20,000, they're way above the numbers that Israel has claimed. They claim Israel killed in Gaza in over 2 years, and they've done this in 4 days. This is unbelievable. Anybody else?
To their own people. To their own people.
Yeah, and what do you think they would do to us?
Really?
If they had the chance?
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think things are about to get kinetic. I don't know. It seems like Trump kind of painted himself in a corner when he pretty much guaranteed that if they killed anybody, that there was going to be a U.S. response. So now it seems like there has to be a U.S. response, and I'm hoping this doesn't drag into. I don't think it'll drag into anything long term. I think it'll be more like the last time, the 12 days or less, of strategic strikes. So let's just hope that it's that, and it's enough to break the regime's back to allow the Shah to take over, and hopefully peace to kind of break out back there again. But I don't know. We'll see how this all shakes out.
I just heard an interview with Amiad Chikli on JNS True East with my friend Duran Spielman, and he was just saying that he's not optimistic. He's a security expert, works in the Israeli government. He just says that it doesn't seem like there's a unifying. He doesn't know how big it is, for one thing, and he doesn't know if there's a unifying factor. But the regime has bullets and the other side does not. So a lot of Christians in Iran, and they need our prayer. So Britt, why don't you just lead us in a prayer for Iran, and then we'll get into the technocracy part of this.
Sure. Dear Lord, we just pray that you will look over the people of Iran, that you will give them your protection from the evils of this regime. Guide everyone that's involved in this, guide them away from the dangers, and let this be an opportunity for your word to be spread throughout all of Iran. And we just put our hope and trust in you alone. In you we pray. Amen.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to start with Scott Townsend, and we're gonna talk about a number of issues tonight. We're going to talk about energy, power, where we are on the AI development scale, and some things that actually touch on the Middle East. We will discuss a thing that maybe a lot of you have not heard of. It was just published recently by our government, called Pax Silica. We hear Pax Romana, Pax Judaica, Pax Silica now, because they've got to get in on this. And then we'll also discuss a little bit about what's coming up at the World Economic Forum this week. So Scott, lead us off tonight, if you would, please.
Okay, I'd like to share my screen here.
Is it
share screen? Okay, let's see. Sorry, I fumbled just a bit there.
okay?
All right, I'd like to begin just by saying that last prophecy roundtable that we did, I remember, a fair number of minutes into our episode last time, we began talking about what would happen if AI data centers got into space. And that was super intriguing to me. And I was doing some thinking about it. And then last week, when Pete and I were talking on the Rev 310 channel, I accidentally made a mistake when I was looking at this image, but really I intended to answer questions based on a second image on my Substack, which I fumbled on that. So this is a quick visualization of what I prompted the Gemini Nano Banana Pro model to visualize based on my text prompt. And I basically, you see the outcome. I think it did a good job here. AI clusters, all connected as though they were lifted by one of the SpaceX rockets. We know that the Falcon 9 rockets are able to deploy Starlink clusters very quickly. And my next article will be on the SpaceX velocity to be able to launch payloads into space. It's not quite done yet, but I'll have it out pretty soon. And then I wanted to draw this visual into really where we think that the B system could potentially be more protected, more sustainable, if you will, than what we see down on terra firma. And what was part of our conversation last time that we were meeting was that if AI data centers and capacities in space, well, the cooling issue is largely resolved, which is significant. You don't need water because water doesn't have to be pumped through the servers to cool it. So you just expose radiator fins and things like that out into space, which is commonly done today to help cool through, I think it's called, it's not convection heat, it's the other one, I think. But the cooling issue goes away. The land issue goes away. You just put it in space. There's no real rights to space. The ability to get rid of all the regulation problems goes away because space is not regulated like land is. So all the permitting, all of the other ideas that you have to do in order to get clearance to even build a data center, even when it's fast tracked, can be largely mitigated. And perhaps one of the biggest advantages of this is that, guess what? It's almost like they planned it. There's a vast array of Starlink low Earth orbit communication systems up there that are like a hive mesh type network. So I could see very easily that, AI won't be doing training in AI, but AI could do inference and enforcement actions while in space. So what I did to kind of really think about this is I did a revised process diagram. If you guys remember, 9-10 months ago, a year ago, I was showing a different type of slide, showing the different, like a J.B. Hickson style. These are the entities that are working to support the mark of the beast. And there was the Luciferian bloodlines, and there were the 3-letter agencies and the technology partners and things like that. But this is specific to the mark. How does the mark, operate outside of Earth in a way that enforces the buy-sell decision? And this is why I started to really think deeply about it. So I'd like to go through this here. Let's begin our diagram. This is basically—
Scott, can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Are like these diagrams, are they available on your Substack?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. IamAWatchman.substack.com. I admit it might be easier for people to see it there and blow it up than on the screen here. Okay.
Blow it up in a figurative sense.
Yes. Got it. So this is going to go left to right, and we're going to begin over here. I tasked the workflow to begin with a user presents payment authentication. And I think I'm correct, and I think the guys will agree that the amount of mobile phones that are out there deployed are ready to go. I think that the mark may have some element of in the payment authentication way. It might be the transport layer. The mark is what authenticates the user as the user, gives identity to that. But there's a transport there of a phone. Well, the phone can present a payment. Down here, the point of sales terminal, so you're paying for gas or anything down there. It captures the authentication data and the biometrics involved with the mark. So you've got your payment thing on your phone. You show your mark. You do whatever that looks like. And we don't know what the technical stack is going to be exactly for the mark itself. There's a lot of speculation there. We could talk about that later. So the input is the payment credentials, the biometric scan, and which is on the right hand or the forehead. Then what happens is in the workflow, now that you've captured that at the point of sale, which is the same thing as the vendor's terminal, like the cashier behind the gas station thing, it'll go up into some kind of communication network. Now, in this case, I'm using Starlink, mostly because it's the only platform that is truly global. I mean, they're all over the place. And so I really believe that given the shortness of the hour here, I think Starlink will play a role in this. So from there, it goes into space-based compute infrastructure and the AI cluster. And the AI cluster, which is a model of experts or a small language model. So it doesn't have to be these gigantic Grok models that are over there in Memphis that take up 200,000 GPUs, It could be what's called narrow intelligence. It just has to figure out, is this user presenting the correct, authentication? And when I get the information from the banking system and the blockchain, whatever it is that they're integrating to, it needs to be able to make that buy-sell decision. So it then goes through the policy framework, to determine, is this going to be allowed or not? So first of all, if the person doesn't have a mark, it'll be declined, correct? Or if if the person presents, but they don't have money in the bank, you can see that would also be declined. So it's, or if, let me just color commentate here, because this is going to happen. This is the world economic, this is the blockchain control narrative, where you've done some kind of violation, which has lowered your social credit score below a threshold in order to buy a specific thing. That's what I mean by the policy framework here. And then we go into a decision gate that says, is the buy authorized or declined? If it is authorized, then you generate an authorized off path data packet. That means that it comes back down into the terminal, back into the POS system, the cash register, and then permits the transaction to go through. So I don't know if this is any more scary or erroneous or heavy than what already happens with point of sale terminals. People may not realize, but point of sale terminals are connected to computers somewhere, and they go to banks, and the bank looks up the transaction and figures out if there's enough funds, and then authorizes it or declines it. That's exactly the same thing. It's just that now we're looping out into space, and we're involving AI data centers in a part of the world or the air where it cannot be easily defeated. And I think that that's absolutely one of the main value propositions of putting AI data centers in space. You can't walk up to it. You can't drive a truck into it. It doesn't have the kind of resistance to energy and to cooling and to other items like that that would put friction in this process right here, because this has to be global. And I'm thinking that, when I was thinking about the payload of what Starlink can do, and that's next week's article on the death trap of satellites in space, I think that it wouldn't surprise me if this concept is not going to take long. It's certainly when you imagine that the beast system will be enforced at the midpoint of the tribulation by the false prophet. We have plenty of time to get this kind of infrastructure in space and to have it perform like this. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that from my point of view as a tech guy, a former chief technology officer, a guy that was responsible for systems infrastructure for companies that I was a co-founder in, it definitely makes sense to me. And I'm waiting for news. When Elon gets interviewed, and the interviews and things, and the summary is on my Substack of all the conversations there. But I don't think it's going to take as long as he's saying. He's saying 4 or 5 years. That's just, I don't know why he would even say that. I think it could be next year or even sooner. So I think we'll begin to see some experiments with this. So that was all I wanted to bring up on this. Thank you, John, for that.
Okay. Anybody got any comments or anything?
Yeah, if you had that photo up, you can see that on the Earth, we only get a small percentage of the sun's power or the sun's energy, based on cloud cover or where we are positioned on the Earth.
Living in a whole Ohio.
Yeah, or day or night, So we only get a small percentage, but those satellites up there are going to get hundreds of, I don't know how much percentage wise more, but it's going to be astronomical. So he is, Musk is actually, I think, doing an IPO with this, and it's worth somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 trillion. And here's a couple of stats for that. In 2024, the energy storage business was 58 billion, and it's estimated to go to 114 to 465 billion by 2030. Solar energy it was 207 billion in 2012, and it's estimated to be upwards of 600 billion by 2030. Data center power is going from 415 terawatts in 2024 to 652 terawatts by 2030. And then the AI specific energy demand was 8 terawatt hours in 2024 to 652 terawatt hours by 2030. So if you think about that, right, how much the demand is going up. Here's what I got this off X, and I don't remember who posted this. I meant to capture his name, but he sums it up pretty well. He says, here's why this matters. Whoever controls orbital computing, talking about those satellites with the energy power controlling and, matched with AI up there, is going to control the AI revolution. There's only one company on Earth with fully reusable rockets that can launch at the scale required. Jensen Huang, new NVIDIA CEO, called space data centers a dream. Translation: if NVIDIA is screwed if Elon actually pulls this off. Because if SpaceX succeeds, every AI company on the planet becomes Elon's customer. OpenAI needs compute running on SpaceX satellites. Google needs more capacity. It's renting orbital infrastructure. Microsoft needs more power. It's paying SpaceX for launch and compute access. Elon won't just be in the AI race. He'll own the entire track everyone else is running on. And that's where that 1.5 trillion valuation comes in.
Pete, that's an excellent catch. The other thing is that I think it's 100% access. And you might say, well, wait a minute, there's eclipses of the moon that would block portions of the Earth. But the thing is, when you're out in space, you can have data centers running. And when it's shaded by the moon, you still have, 80% of your capacity working. So the eclipse concept is not going to impact the energy that much. It'll be literally 100% online.
Is there a couple quick questions? Is there some way that they're planning on, because the other side of this, which I think is significant from a prophecy standpoint, is we seem to be entering a period of different, maybe increased solar activity, and how would that impact these farms in space?
Well, they're shielded. And so there's a significant amount of radiation in space. And that's one of the reasons why we know about shielding, because we do it all the time. We've got thousands of satellites up there already that are protected. And they get through those, what are those called? The XME class. These are the most severe solar storms, and they make it through that just fine. The difficulty is, though, I don't know that quantum computing could survive that, because quantum state is so delicate that I don't think that I don't see that AI and quantum will be in those little floating data centers out in space. I think it'll just be AI compute, but I could be wrong.
But wouldn't it be a better place for quantum computing because it needs to operate near
The
absolute
cold
zero?
is better.
And cold. Yeah.
Yes, the cold is better, but even space is not cold enough, John.
But so is the Arctic. The Arctic's very cold, which I think is part of what we're doing with Greenland, or what we want Greenland for, as opposed to the EU has Svalbard, Norway. It's kind of their big data hub up there in the Arctic Circle. So, but as for prophecy wise, I think the first and the fourth trumpet could impact internet activity, connectivity on the Earth. If all the a third of the trees on the Earth burn and all the grass, I mean, obviously the smoke from that is that's gonna be all over the Earth, covering a layer of the Earth with smoke. And then the fourth trumpet being the third of the sun, moon, and stars being darkened or dimmed, so that may diminish some of that.
Does that mean they're a third are darkened, or what's there is darkened by a third?
Or
that's written from the surface.
Is darkened.
I think that's from the surface's perspective. Out in space, it's not going to be that way.
It could be that.
And by the way, those high intensity signals, the satellite transmission signals, aren't affected by smoke. I don't think. I think they go right through all that.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not a
The
physics
smoke
guy.
would affect more of solar ability here.
Solar,
I
Yeah,
think.
but on Earth, John, not in
Right.
space. Yeah, right.
Well, we know the other companies that are considering putting data centers in space. Google is hot on the trail. Also, Jeff Bezos, he's talking seriously about putting some data centers in space. And of course, Elon Musk is the granddaddy of all. He has the ability to launch these things into space. So this is a major trend at this point. Everybody's going to get on the bandwagon. Where it will lead, who knows? But if you consider that all the trees are going to get smoked on Earth, whatever, then the internet's going to be interrupted on Earth. All the fiber optic cables and the transmission towers, all that stuff. Well, there's a backup plan, and it's all in space.
Mm-hmm.
Won't be touched with anything going on Earth at that point.
So, there's a lot of talk also about here. Like I know there was a lot of things in the papers locally about Zuckerberg and Meta. At the one hand, they're laying everybody off for metaverse. That didn't work out. But he's also entered into agreements with regard to nuclear power here in the United States and in Ohio and Pennsylvania. We have some existing plants. And do you think that's going to be pursued by them as an alternative, or are they just pretty much going to fold and go to space if that turns out to be workable?
Well, from a power point of view, I remember let's see, what's the name of that that new initiative, the Pax Silica. One of the value propositions.
Talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, one of the value props there, John, if you guys remember, was that if they could put AI data centers in Saudi Arabia or one of those big guys that has tons of oil and gas, that virtually solves a lot of that problem overnight.
Okay. Yeah, a friend of mine suggested that maybe we've miniaturized nuclear facilities. We have them on ships all over the world. Why don't we just do something like that? At least the U.S. Navy does. My response
regulation.
Regulation.
Well, and it's also hard to get the ships close to a cornfield, but that's
well, the Great Lakes, John.
That's right. Yeah, I know. So anyway, that's kind of interesting. So anybody else on this particular topic? So let me go this direction. So Eliezer Ludkowski and some of the other guys, they wrote a book, If we build it, everybody dies, or something like that. A very optimistic, forward-looking book. But does that pretty much make all of these arguments about slowing this down, regulating it, bringing it under control, or if it gets out of control, we'll just go bomb it? Does that sort of take that argument off the table, that we got to get rid of this, at least have the ability to just nuke this stuff?
From the beginning, I've thought that was really naive, because there's multiple countries pursuing this and the stakes are so high. The idea that regulating it slows it down in some way is just not going to be the case, because not everyone's going to abide by those regulations. I mean, getting the world to agree on something right now, probably not going to happen. And then just from the standpoint of, well, we can go bomb these data centers. Well, that's an act of war, right? And so then you trigger World War III if you're bombing someone else's data center. So I've always found their particular arguments very elementary. I think there's just an outright pursuit of these technologies, and whoever gets them is going to conquer the world with them. And if there's no second place.
So, Britt, if you think about it, this is a reset for some of the of the AI foundation model leaders that are falling behind, because if they can get it in space, they could potentially regain the lead and stay in the lead. You know, I'm thinking of the other guys, like even Meta, for example, is not a very good model anymore. They can't maintain the same pace as the other guys. Amazon's Bedrock platform and their own private models, one of which is called Q, they they don't have that level of sophistication that the Anthropic models do, for example, in OpenAI. Incidentally, I just heard that that OpenAI 5.2 Codex just dropped today, and that's their version, their most powerful version that is actually more specialized towards coding tasks for programming. So it's truly fascinating what's happening.
Okay, so maybe this would be a good place to talk about something that's kind of a recent topic that I don't know how. Maybe it was one of you guys who mentioned it yesterday. I had not heard of it, and we talk a lot about the Middle East and that sort of thing. And that's this thing that's coming out of the State Department called Pax Silica. And I'll just read a couple. Part of it is Pax Silica is the State Department of State's flagship effort on AI and supply chain security, advancing new economic security consensus among allies and trusted partners. If the 20th century, this is what Jacob Hellberg, who's kind of leading this from the State Department side for the United States, he's the Undersecretary for Economic Affairs. If the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st century runs on compute and the minerals that feed it. This historic declaration hails a new economic security consensus, ensuring allied partners build the AI ecosystem of tomorrow, from energy and critical minerals to high-end manufacturing and models. And then there's the Pax Silica Declaration. We affirm our shared commitment to advance mutual prosperity, this is coming from the Trump administration. It sounds like something out of the UN. Mutual prosperity, technological progress, and economic security for our peoples. So I'm going to start with Patrick. Patrick, you've written a book with Courtney Turner. Actually, I'll be interviewing you guys at 4:00 live stream on the 19th, January 19th, if you all want to tune in for that. So 4:00 Eastern. What is going on?
Well,
and please feel free to be as brief, take as brief a 30, 40 minutes as you need.
I don't need that much. There was a document that was created in July of 25. It was called America's AI Action Plan. Some of you might remember that. I think we talked about it along the way. This is the outcome of that action plan. Because Pillar 3 in the action plan, there was, I won't talk about the other two pillars, but it was written by the Secretary of State, that would be Marco, and Michael Kratsius was lead author, and also David Sachs from the White House. And they created this action plan. It's not even an executive order, it's not legislation, but this is their action plan going forward. They've already achieved two of the pillars, pretty much. But Pillar 3 speaks about leading in international AI diplomacy and security. This caught my eye because it talks about taking our complete technology stack. That means the hardware all the way through the software applications, whatever, and taking that whole stack and exporting it to our allies around the world. So it says that specifically on Pillar 3, export American AI to allies and their partners. Well, here's our partners. They're coming to us now to sign this document. And basically, well, I have to read one more sentence out of this. It says the United States must meet global demand for AI by exporting its full AI technology stack, hardware, models, software applications, and standards to all countries willing to join America's AI alliance. Well, this sets the stage now for this the control over the technology when we give it to partners. This is not a feel-good, kumbaya sort of a declaration, but they're going to put teeth into it to ensure that the allies use it for our interests, not theirs, basically. So this is like an export control on steroids. So going forward, this declaration, by the way, is very it's not very precise at all. It's kind of namby-pamby United Nations speak.
Which one you're talking about, the Pax Silica?
Exactly, Pax Silica.
But the underlying thing that kind of led to that is this America's AI Action Plan.
Exactly. It doesn't take much to connect these dots between these two documents. Now, in any case, the State Department, and remember, Marco was one of the authors of this AI Action Plan in the first place. Well, he probably didn't write it, but his name to appear on it. At this point, you'll see that their intention is to get everybody in line, sign basically the user agreement, the terms of service agreement. Will give you everything we have if you promise to take care of it and use it for our own glory. This is basically empire building at this point, in my opinion, because whoever controls this AI in the end, they're going to be, well, the conquerors of the world at that point. So it's pretty thin. And however, you have two Middle Eastern countries signing on already. There's been others. I'm sure there's going to be many more countries.
Who are the Middle Eastern plans that signed on to Pax Silica?
Qatar.
Yes. Qatar is one.
Israel.
Israel.
That's correct.
The UAE.
Right. And
Singapore.
I think Saudi Arabia, right?
Yes. Saudis haven't done yet. Saudi Arabia has not yet. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will at some point. So here's the partners that are being led to come into the pack for America. And we'll see how it turns out, but I don't like any of it.
Well, if they're bundling, this data center concept together,
yes,
it makes me wonder what the constituent components are. So in other words, I'm wondering, does OpenAI run the models, or does Palantir do all the things that they do? Is like, what goes with that package?
Yeah, when they talk about this is very specific language in the AI Action Plan. They talk about the full AI technology stack, and then they say hardware, models, software, applications, and standards. That's everything. That's a whole enchilada, so to speak.
I wonder if blockchain is part of that.
Oh yes, that's applications.
So Patrick,
Wow.
just sort of this is a softball question for you. Do you think that this just sort of came up since Trump took office again less than a year ago?
All of this stuff has been launched at us since the inauguration, for sure. And did they have a running start? I'm sure they did. The tech bros in Washington, D.C., I'm sure they had ideas beforehand. Probably some of these documents might have been drafted before even the election. I don't know. But basically, all this stuff has been launched in America since the inauguration in January 23 of 25.
Right. It's
Trump is the strong accelerant for sure.
here's a image of some of the countries that are, at least from one of their things that that they're involved with. So it looks like Israel,
Japan.
UK,
Yeah.
Japan, Australia. Is that a
Australia's there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, South Korea.
South Korea.
what's the moon with 5 stars in it? What country is that?
Good
That
question.
looks like UAE, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. There will be more. That table will be full of flags before it's done.
It will be.
Yeah, and it's not a coincidence, this language they're using either. It invokes the Roman Empire. And to me, it makes me think of, so we read in Daniel 7:23 that a revived form of the Roman Empire will devour the whole world. So to use that type of language, isn't an accident. It shows their ambitions with this.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Wow.
necessarily mean that this is a forerunner to that empire, but it shows the thought patterns that are present with world leaders today and where the world is headed.
Such a good observation, Britt.
Yes. There's another aspect of this. China has its Belt and Road Initiative. They spread it all over the world. It's basically a supply chain management, taking goods and services here and there. And they've poured billions and billions of dollars into this infrastructure to create the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, they have the physical side for sure. But now Pax Silica represents essentially a competitor to that Belt and Road by creating this infrastructure to protect the supply chains of the world with AI. So you can see, we have China on one side, Pax Silica on the other side. How will this compete? If it will Pax Silica eventually take over the Belt and Road Initiative? Perhaps. It's all about supply chain. That says it in that document. The Pax Silica document talks all about supply chains, protecting the integrity of the blah, 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 the global supply. Well, this is all about trade for sure. But now China has already asserted himself around the world. Now President Trump is asserting, asserting another empire, if you will. I think it's being built right under our noses, honestly.
Do you think the recent foray into Venezuela had anything to do with this?
Absolutely, it does. It absolutely does.
Explain that a little bit.
Well, you're going to see, you'll see technocracy, I think, show up in Venezuela, but Venezuela they're in a unique strategic position at this point because they have lots of oil, for one thing. Energy is important to anybody in the Western world. The denial of energy to other parts of the world is also important, if not just because we want it, but if we can deny that oil be sent to some other country that's their enemy, that shakes them up big time. My guess is a lot of what's going on in Iran right now is connected to Venezuela, because they're buddies. They've been buddies forever, and so Iran depends on a lot of infrastructure coming out of Venezuela. So and I think intentionally backed them into a corner to where they can't do anything at this point other than kill their own people. That's a desperate measure for sure, but they have nowhere to go. They see the handwriting on the wall. They're losing Argentina or Venezuela rather, as an ally. They can't count on them anymore. And So that the dominoes are kind of falling around the world. I think we should see some other interesting things come out of this, maybe with China as well.
Yeah, I think this ties into this intense global power competition that we're seeing. We have the United States and its allies on one side, and the BRICS nations really led by China on the other side.
Yes.
And as Patrick said, China has spread its influence throughout the world by building infrastructure, lending funds, building trade routes. The United States, post-World War II, we've talked about this in the past, it took over that role from the 19th century British Empire, who projected their power across the world using the Royal Navy to guarantee freely navigable trade routes. And in exchange, the British pound was the world's reserve currency. London was the center of international finance. That baton was passed to the United States post-World War I, and especially post-World War II, to where the United States is projecting its military power around the globe. And there's a symbiotic relationship between the US dollar as the dominant currency in international trade, and the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and that ability to project power. And they feed on one another. And we saw that breaking down with the failure to reopen the Red Sea. So what's happening here, we've seen BRICS bring all of these different nations under their umbrella. You've got 2 of the 3 largest nuclear arsenals in the world, 2 of the 3 largest oil producers in the world. They're bringing together all of these different countries. And now we see one of the messages of Venezuela is, if you're going to become part of BRICS, how are they going to protect you? It's a forceful reminder of, don't think so fast that you're going to de-dollarize and that you're going to get out, that you may want to rethink being in the sphere of influence of the United States. And the same thing is happening with Iran, because again, Iran is a strategic element in the BRICS alliance. They're a large oil producer, large natural gas producer. And so for the United States and Israel to strike Iran, and well, where's the protection from China? Where's the protection from Russia? And so it's sending there's a whole bunch of messages going out here from the United States, like it or not, whether you think that's right or wrong. That's what's happening. It's again saying you're trying to compete with our empire. This is our counterpunch, and we're seeing that counterpunch play out in the headlines. It's all connected.
So Britt, so this is where we may disagree, but and I don't know how effective is BRICS being in undermining the dollar as the world reserve currency?
It has been very effective in rallying other nations against, well, mostly, frankly, it hasn't been BRICS that's been effective. It's been the United States. So when the United States says, as soon as you do something that we don't like, we're going to freeze your assets, we're going to shut you out of the SWIFT system, we're going to impose sanctions on you, and they do this over and over, other nations look around and they say, is that us next? And so we've seen over the past 12 years, there's been a trend toward divestiture of US treasuries being held by foreign nations. And instead, it's not that they're looking at a BRICS currency as the alternative, they're looking to gold. And that's why we've seen central banks around the world buying gold at rates that we haven't seen since the late 1960s. What was happening in the late 1960s? Well, the breakdown of Bretton Woods. And we saw that end with Nixon's ending of the convertibility of the dollar into gold in August 1971. So in preparation of the move away from that monetary system, we saw central banks buying gold in record amounts for several years. We've seen the same thing already right now. So I don't think it's necessarily that these nations won't be using the dollar, but we've seen them move away from treasuries. I mean, we could spend a whole segment talking about, the Genius Act and making stable coins have to buy U.S. treasuries. They're trying to create this artificial demand for the treasuries because it's not there from other nations. So other nations are trying to pull away, and it's not easy for them to do. And I think the United States is trying to send a message, a reminder that it's not so easy for that to happen. So this is part of a power struggle that we would expect to see.
It's interesting. One of the countries here that you see in the BRICS, and this is, I'm not sure exactly when this was. I think it's changed a little bit since this graphic was made up. But you see Somalia there, which has been kind of involved in some recent news. Where you see Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Libya, Egypt, Indonesia, and Brazil, of course, South Africa. It's interesting. So let me ask you this question, and I'll send it to Britt first. So you talked about stable coins, digital currencies, blockchain-based, all these different currencies that seem to be being pushed by the Trump administration. Is there something behind that more than just pushing digital currencies?
Absolutely, positively. I got to answer this.
Feel free to break in anytime, Patrick.
I'm jumping out of my skin, basically.
Okay.
What we saw when Trump signed an executive order jettisoning the Fed from the research project on central bank digital currencies, everybody cheered. We thought maybe he's going to take on the Fed once and for all and just get him, put him out of existence. Not so. What was going on at that time was the erection of another financial system that had payments baked into it. In the same way that the Fed was researching in the first place, but the Fed they never had their act together for that kind of stuff. These tech bro jocks in Silicon Valley erected this whole separate financial system with regulations around it in 10 months. And that what it took the Fed to do in 5 years, they did it just boom. But the Fed never had anything to do with other than payment systems, transferring money from here to there. The concept of the tech bros in Washington, D.C. is, no, we need more than that. We need the payment system, yes, but we have to have, aside of that, in the same space, the asset tokenization of everything in the world. That means the assets of the world are going to be tokenized and set side by side with the payment system. It's not going to be the payment system, but it's going to represent all of the assets of the world underneath that will fuel the whole thing. This is what's been erected. And you see at this point, all of the similarities between this new economic system based on asset tokenization, not debt, asset tokenization. You see how compatible it is all of a sudden with the Islamic finance world, where they don't have any debt at all. They have asset tokenization. This is one reason that the Islamic world has been the leaders on this area of fintech, that's financial technologies, blockchain, payment systems, asset tokenization, all this stuff. They're way ahead of the Western world at this point. But you have 1.2 billion people following after Islamic finance. All of a sudden, these two systems, our system that's been erected by the tech bros in Washington, all of a sudden it's compatible with Sharia finance. Now, maybe we're not going to have the Sharia aspect of it, nevertheless, but you can see that there's a new global economic system being created right before our eyes. And this has been a result of the tech bros in Washington, D.C., the arch technocrats, I call them, people like David Sachs, Michael Kratsius, Howard Lutnick, et cetera, Scott Besson as well. These people have they've taken the reins themselves and just without anybody's permission, they just erected a new economic system with payment tokens as well as asset tokens. This will not end well for us, but a lot of stuff we're talking about, will the dollar die? Probably. But that's not the question to ask at this point. Why are they so bent to get this whole thing done in the first place? AI is a big part of it, for sure.
If I could be the contrarian a little bit, I think early on I saw BRICS as a challenge to U.S. Hegemony around the world. But I think as of the last, I guess since Russia, invaded Ukraine, I stopped seeing them as that, primarily because that coalition was starting to crumble because they had so many issues. Russia's in a prolonged war with Ukraine, bleeding hundreds of thousands of soldiers. They've been basically alienated by most of the world. Their allies now are starting to fall. Venezuela was a major ally. Iran is in shambles right now, going through this revolution. China is a paper tiger. Mm-hmm. India's got its own issues. That leaves Indonesia, and South Africa is basically turned into a banana republic with very racist leadership that's drawing its own version of apartheid, like reverse apartheid. So I don't see the BRICS as that much of a threat, but I think in light of that, the U.S. has, under Trump, has now begun to take apart or attempt to reassert not just the Monroe Doctrine, but the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648.
It's called the Donroe Doctrine.
Donroe Doctrine. And then the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, with the assertion of national sovereignty being primary, and that all of our treaties going forward would be totally strategic based. What's in the best interest of the United States, but what's also mutually beneficial to whatever country. They don't care what country that is. And in this instance, it's going to be Russia. And it's going to be countries like Gettr and others that we don't think we should be aligned with. But Trump's looking at this from a strategic standpoint, not from a traditional, post-World War II, post-Cold War mindset where the U.S. is the world's policeman. And, we've had to basically babysit Europe for the last 70-something years. And that new alignment, political alignment or geopolitical alignment, is fracturing the globalist world order based out of the World Economic Forum in Davos, based out of UK, Bank of England, all of the British Empire that Britt was mentioning earlier. That's been quietly in the background. They've been using us for the last 70 plus years to do all their heavy lifting and basically pulling the strings for the U.S. to go to this war, this conflict, this thing, that thing. We have to provide the bulk of NATO. I mean, NATO, in my opinion, should have been, and I've thought this for 10, 15 years already, NATO should have ended back in 91 or, 92, right after the Soviet Union collapsed, because at that point, it served its purpose. NATO could have been the European Defense Force. It could have been something else that was totally on Europe, but we kept it going. We kept expanding it, and that just became this thing. And this is why the Europeans don't want the war in Ukraine to end. They want to bleed Russia dry. But at the same time of feigning outrage against Russia, I mean, even a couple of years ago, this is why Trump got on to Angela Merkel. Like, why are you doing these backdoor deals with Russia for oil? And at the same time, you've got us, we're doing all the heavy lifting to put the military up, to stand up against Russia, and at the same time you're dealing with them. So I think Trump's done with that. And not to sound like a sycophant, I just see what he's doing, and I see that his war now is it's more against the globalists than it is against the traditional enemies that they thought. But part of that, there's also the idea that China is a near peer competitor that's also going to challenge our role at the top, as well as these other countries that are still not acting correctly right now, like Iran and North Korea, China, Russia. But he's not opposed to talking to him. He talked to Kim Jong-un back in his first administration. He'll talk to anybody. as long as they'll be strategically aligned with his vision of making America, great again.
Yeah.
So this raises a number of questions on my part. We're going to come back to backpack silica.
Okay.
But in the context of what we've been talking about with regard to how these geopolitical alliances and things play out in the end times, should people be revising their charts?
My chart's
and
perfect.
graphs? Yeah, why? Because you just did it this afternoon or something, or there seems to be a correlation between how strongly you feel about your chart and your humbleness.
Well, we've had two of our team members, John, jumping out of their skin today. I think Britt and I feel like we're left out somehow.
I'll shut up.
Well, you mean you're not jumping out of your skin, or?
Yeah, we're just normal guys. I mean, these two here are clowns right now.
Well, they wrote books, so
Oh, yeah.
there seems to be a
I'm working
correlation.
on.
Yeah, I know. We all have them in process.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, I'm serious about that because I mean, this is sort of not necessarily. Well, it is kind of technology related because of the way the EU's tried to go about regulating things technology wise. But then they get thrown a curveball. They have one nation can just kind of throw a monkey wrench into what they're trying to do. So Poland comes out and says, we don't want anything to do with that. Now the Europeans are scrambling. And I saw a video today, forget who it was, they were talking about, well, they want to build a European defense force. So Germany, they're scaring everybody. They have 300 tanks and they're going to build another 100. And that's going to scare somebody, into doing anything. So, what do you guys think about this and how this is affecting some of these thoughts we've had about these alliances and things in the end times? And it's easy to stay where you are. I get that. Okay, but the real world may catch up to us.
I think the Venezuela operation with the drones, and Britt's really been I think Britt was one of the first guys that was talking about like the hive mind technology years and years and years ago. And I think this was a perfect example of the power of the United States when we implement the kind of technology that's just a sampling of the technology, but I'll hand it over to Britt for his expertise in this.
Well, I mean, going back to your question, John, I mean, I think the trends are all there. I mean, to me, we just keep going full steam ahead toward the tribulation period. Exactly how it all plays out, I've never made charts in regard to that, just in regard to what the Bible is telling us, but we can recognize certain trends. And, and Patrick said something that really stood out a minute ago about when Trump came in, they issued this executive order. Oh, no central bank digital currencies. And again, aside from the fact that an executive order could very easily be turned over, what was created with the Genius Act is really no different, because people were, what were people alarmed about when it came to central bank digital currency? Surveillance, invasion of privacy, the ability to programmable currency that could be controlled. And if you look at the White House, their own fact sheet on the Genius Act points out, it says all stablecoin issuers must possess the technical capability, this means they must program their currencies, their stablecoins, to seize, freeze, or burn payment stablecoins when legally required and must comply with lawful orders to do so. So there's several aims of the Genius Act. Again, one is we build in an automatic demand for U.S. treasuries that the rest of the world has been telling us for a decade they don't want. Now, anybody that gets a stable coin by law, it has to be backed by the dollar, or it has to be backed by US treasuries. And think about what we mentioned earlier, this ability to issue sanctions, kick people out of SWIFT, freeze their assets. If they're using our stable coins, which can easily cross borders, then it gives the United States the ability to freeze, seize, or burn foreigners' currency. And so this is what Europe is looking at. And one of the reasons we see them pressing forward with the digital euro, yes, they want to control their population, but they also don't want the United States to control it, because the overwhelming majority of the digital transactions that are taking place in the European Union right now are dominated by US companies, Visa, MasterCard, Google Pay, Apple Pay. And they're looking around and they see these stable coins coming out and they think, well, we're going to lose our complete monetary sovereignty. Our citizens are going to be at the mercy of the United States. We're going to be colonies of the United States. We need to press ahead and create our own version, get widespread adoption to keep that from happening. So we're seeing not just a race to see who can develop advanced military technologies, but we're also seeing a race within currency wars as well. Because again, all of these nations that are piloting central bank digital currency and stable coins, they're not just trying to control their own populations, but they're trying to keep them from being controlled by others. And they also want to be able to export the control they have over their population to other people and other nations as well. So that's why we're seeing it's again, part of this global power struggle, who's going to come out on top.
Well,
and at the center of that is digital currency.
Sorry to interrupt, Britt.
Sure.
I'm wondering if Pax Romana or Silica continues to gain traction, and I believe it will, then doesn't that automatically invalidate any country's desire or ability to do their own central bank digital currency? I mean, it's the death knell to the digital euro, right? Am I reading too far into that?
No, I don't think so. So there's, again, central.
Scott, can you just say that? Can you say that again, please? I want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Well, if Pax Romana or Pax Silica is setting up the AI sustainability, I think they, in the language of the release that they did, it talked about the effectiveness of supply chain protection, electricity, power, chips, data centers, things like that, which is all compute based. And if you own the compute, you basically own a lot of, the technical base of the world. So I'm wondering if people align. So another way to look at this is, would Europe ever be a member of Pax Silica? Because it seems like it would invalidate their own digital euro almost immediately, because surely the crypto and the digital IDs and all that will be coming out of this new alliance, don't you think?
Yeah, I think put that way, yes. I mean, if you're saying the United States is controlling that system, they're not going to want to plug into that system. They're going to have their own. And when we look at those Pax Silica nations, I didn't see an EU nation in there unless I'm
That's right.
I think you
You're
will.
already concerned about, giving up sovereignty, I guess, Britt, is what I'm saying here. Then would they sign into that, agreement?
It would be very strategic if the State Department tried to convince even one European nation to join our coalition with Pax Silica. That would potentially break the EU apart if even one country bought it.
You've got certain countries within the EU that are very anti-EU that have been pushing back against Brussels for a while now.
Yeah,
whether it's Hungary or Poland, even Italy now.
Spain.
So there's already this disaffected, emotional angst running against the EU with how much they've allowed in with illegal immigration and all of this kind of multicultural stuff that's been crammed down everybody's throats, that there's a lot of anger there. So I can see Poland or somebody else joining just to spite the EU and then, basically blowing the EU up, and then it'll have to reform into something else.
Yeah.
It's not going away. It'll come back into something, but it may not stay as it is.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about Pax Silica. And Patrick, I know you expressed some views early on in this about who's behind this. So one of the guys that seems to be heading this up is this guy named Jacob Hellberg. And Jacob seems to have a connection to just about everything in Silicon Valley, Palantir, Google, etc. And he, to be honest with you, like me of all people should be making comments on somebody's looks, but he kind of looks like somebody out of central casting for an end times movie.
That's good.
So
He looks like a McKinsey, guy or something like that.
Yeah. So so there's a little
Harvard.
bit better picture of him there. So Patrick, tell us a little bit about Mr. Hellberg.
Wow, this is a guy as undersecretary of the State Department. He's credited for everything relating to Pax Silica. My guess is he put his own pen to the paper.
He did
with probably a couple other people, but nevertheless, he's the guy that crafted the whole architecture. Hellberg.
Roman nose too.
Pardon?
It's got a Roman nose.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
I'll have to see if I can find a profile pic of him to see if
he may not have one.
Maybe he's a cousin to Macron or something.
It could be. But here's a guy who was a senior advisor to Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir. You think there's a conflict of interest here?
Wow.
It's incredible. You can't make this up. He's had advisory roles at think tanks like the Center for a New American Security. In 2020, until 2020, he led Google's internal global product policy efforts to combat disinformation and foreign interference. Remember all the censorship issue we had during COVID? This was a guy that was the head of Google's disinformation team. Okay, well, he's married to a guy, not a woman. That means he's gay. And his husband or wife, I don't know which is which, but his significant other, his name is Keith Rabois, R-A-B-O-I-S. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that. His marriage ceremony that was concluded in 2018 was officiated by none other than Sam Altman. I didn't know Sam Altman was performing gay weddings. Apparently, he does. This is incredible. The conflict of interest that exists at this point is just incredible.
So, pardon my question, and I want to ask it in a certain way, but then I'll be accused of using profanity. But what in the tarnation is going on? This is the Trump administration, right?
Yes.
Okay, Patrick.
Big tent.
Yeah. Technocrats. All of them. All of these people, by the way, are marching to the tune of the Dark Enlightenment. We've kind of discussed this before, but it's an evil, twisted ideology that has nothing to do with making America great again. Not one thing. These people think that it's in their purview and under their control to do everything that they're doing and without any consequences or repercussions to them. Most of them are already billionaires. I don't know that this guy is, but most of the people in Washington, like Howard Lutnick, for instance, the Secretary of Treasury or Commerce, he's a billionaire. Most of them are. You can't tell them go away. They just they said, who, me? I could buy you 15 times over, and they probably could. So there's an egotism amongst this group that they think they're above the law at this point. They can do anything with America that they choose to do. And at this point, I'm afraid most of our elected politicians really don't understand what's going on. I give them that credit. They're ignorant. Lots of ignorance in Washington, for sure.
Is that Dark Enlightenment? Is that Curtis Yarvin's?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We got done with this monarch idea when we kicked the British out of our country in the first place. Remember that?
250 years ago, by the way.
I know. So, we got done with a monarch. These people want to bring the monarchy back to America again. They say, well, America's broken. We have to destroy democracy to do it. So let's just get a CEO type, a monarch, to come to take over everything and basically run the country like a Silicon Valley startup company. This is crazy talk, absolute crazy talk, in my opinion. But this is what this is the tech bros philosophy. In fact, Peter Thiel, he refers to Curtis Yarvin as his house philosopher. He said that. He's in kind of an affectionate way. He's my house philosopher. What does that mean? I don't have a house philosopher. I have the Bible, with the Holy Spirit maybe, but who has a house philosopher other than Peter Thiel? Crazy.
Yeah, maybe we should bring one of those on our roundtable. We need.
I find myself.
Philosopher.
I think I might be behind on this dark. What'd you call it? Dark
enlightenment.
Dark enlightenment. I remember someone making a comment on the last roundtable about Musk's MAGA hat, which was blacked out basically.
Yes.
And maybe Patrick, you could send me some links of how I could catch up and our audience can catch up more on this, because I think if we can understand like what's going on there and the motivation behind it, that at least that part of it, which is observable, because as you've said, and Britt has also said, a lot of this stuff, we'll never know about it. It just rolls underneath the surface there.
That popped up in my feed today. For $35, you can get the blacked out X hat.
Good. Wonderful. Yeah. I'd rather buy a cheeseburger, honestly, which is about the same price. So anyway.
Oh, really? You found it on sale, huh? Okay. Now my next question.
Having said, guys, this is the book to buy. This came out in November. I wrote this with Courtney Turner, and it explains everything about the Dark Enlightenment and everything that's happened last year.
Okay, I'll pick up a copy.
And I've been working through it, and I'll be interviewing, as I said, Patrick and Courtney on Monday, January 19th at 4 p.m. Eastern, live stream on FBC's YouTube channel. And I'm sure this will be repeated again, because sometimes we need to read it. The stuff is so bizarre. You have to kind of repeat it over and over again to really grasp what's going on. So Patrick, I want to ask, so by the way, next week we'll get to Davos in a minute, but World Economic Forum is at Davos next week. The theme is called The Spirit of Dialogue. Kind of an interesting choice of a title or theme for this conference. I'm sure have you guys been invited to come speak at Davos?
No, I don't have $50,000 to get a ticket. I mean, it's very expensive.
I know. I hear like it could cost like $1,200 for a cab ride from your hotel to meeting place. So it'll be live streamed. You can actually sign up for a pro trial subscription for 30 days at World Economic Forum. That'll give you access to all of the enough stuff that you'll never want to see anyway, but you'll be able to see it. But it'll be interesting to see Trump's talk there. But and now I've completely lost my train of thought. So this is my thinking. So Patrick, the big economic tech conferences seem to be Davos. There's one in St. Petersburg, Russia, SPIEF, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, and then the World Governments Summit, now they call it, in Dubai, the UAE, and also the Financial Future Investment Initiative Institute, or FII Institute, something like that, in Saudi Arabia, which by the way, every now and then they have a satellite meeting in Miami, so Jared Kushner doesn't have to get on his private jet and go to the Middle East. But I guess I want to explore this because I think this is an end times thing because I think Islam is a much bigger player in this than some of my colleagues do. And I'm interested about this tokenization, Islamic finance, and how this plays into not only market of the beast technology, but market of the beast financial system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been studying this for at least a year now. I wanted to write a book about it, but I just can't get it out yet. Not that I could, but I don't have the gray matter to get my head around it totally. But I see all the markers at this point. For instance, Gettr gifted the president with Air Force One. Who would have thought that would be a good deal? Now they signed this new treaty or whatever agreement with America. They've picked up a military base in Utah, or not Utah, Idaho. Where and all the trillions that have been solicited by President Trump into our tech stack, if you will, to construct data centers, et cetera. This is all Mideastern money. What's going on here? You have to ask the question. There's never been an influx of funds from anybody in our country like this. There's an alignment taking place between these digital platforms, fintech, financial technologies, whatever, blockchain, stable coins, asset tokenization coins. There's an alignment taking place that eventually I think could drive debt out of existence altogether and just put everything into an asset-based system. This would fulfill the prophecy, by the way, that Klaus Schwab came up with a few years ago, but when he said, by 2030, you will own nothing and you'll be happy, they said. I can't understand the happy part. But this is what that's what exactly their concept was. You'll own nothing by 2030. You'll be living in a pay-per-view world. And I love that picture, by the way. What's wrong with this picture? Well, at this point, President Trump has waxed eloquent with all the Mideastern countries to make financial deals with them, thinking, I think, that our system will be eventually compatible with their system. And at that point, this will be the first global system in the world, in the history of the world, a global financial system. 1.2 billion people, add into that another billion people outside of China and India, perhaps. But this will be the first time we have a shot of truly having an economic system, a global economic system. This never happened before in the history of the world. I think this is what they're pushing for, though.
for the record, it's not that I don't believe that Islam won't play a role. I just think that after Gog and Magog, I think militant Islam, the militant arm of Islam, will be neutered, and it won't be looked at anymore. It'll become like Buddhism is today.
Now,
Or
Pete,
Hinduism.
that is a total complete pipe dream on your part, and I want to be there when you get to eat those words.
Well, look,
This is not going away until Jesus Christ returns. That's when it ends, not before.
remember, how many times have you seen a terrorist attack in Dubai? You don't see them there. Why? Because they don't want any part of the militant aspect of.
They banned the Muslim Brotherhood there.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's this civilized world, and the Islamic world is all crazy, but nevertheless, there's a part of that world that doesn't want to kill everybody all the time. You see it in Dubai. You see it in certain instances in Saudi Arabia, although they like to kill people as well. And you see it. Most of the people look at Iran and say, well, that's what the state of the art is with Islam, killing everybody. Well, they're good at it, but you see this other side, these tech jocks, the programmers that are doing these crazy things with AI. They're Islamic programmers. These guys are sharp. They're sharp people. And they're civilized in the sense that they wear expensive wrist watches, and they have the shoes, and they go to the chick places to take their vacations and everything.
The $500 million yachts.
I know, it's crazy. So, there's that aspect of Islam, and then there's this other side, the savage part of it. I think the savage part could be done away with probably with a blink of the eye. If somebody said, you guys are all done now, that's like their Antifa, right? That they're their enforcers. By the way, what happened to Antifa in Portland, Oregon? All of a sudden, they're gone. They moved out. Their encampment is gone. It's been cleared out completely. In Portland, Oregon, that was a heartbeat of Antifa in the United States. All of a sudden, with just a whimper, maybe, all of a sudden they're gone. Boom.
Well, they're protesting ICE in different places.
Yeah. You got to think, though, too, that every religion that is not part of true biblical Christianity, every other system out there has its origin with Satan.
Yes.
1 second after the rapture, Satan has no more use for all these different religions fighting each other. He's going to need them all under his system, doing what he needs them to do, not
Very good point.
Little gods and stuff, and fighting each other and doing terrorist acts. And I just think that once Gog and Magog, now I believe it happens at the beginning. You believe it happens later in the time. So I just think that ends that militant arm of Islam. It's no longer, it's going to be wiped out by God. And so then what's left? You'll still have Muslims left. You'll have Hindus left. You'll have Buddhists. You'll have Zoroastrianists, or whatever they're called, Mormons and everything else. But they're all going to be under this delusion and following eventually the whore of Babylon, whatever this final world religion, which probably has a lot of technology and maybe fallen angels or whatever else mixed up in that to kind of seduce everybody.
But there's this beheading aspect that we read about.
But drones can do that. Drones can take somebody's head off. If you don't have the mark and you've got these little micro drones with just enough explosive charge in it, they can just, if you don't have the mark, it's going to beam on you and take you out.
I've seen that little demo that they did. It was pretty weird, frightening. It was a bee or something like that they used. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Bible is very clear too. By the midpoint of the tribulation, there are only two religions, if you call them that. So there's born again Christians, and then everybody else worships Antichrist. Very clearly says, all those whose names were not written in the Lamb's Book of Life took the mark and worshiped the Antichrist. So they may call themselves Hindus or Muslims or whatever they may want to identify with, but everyone whose name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life will be worshiping Antichrist. That will be their religion. So we're going to see, just as Pete said, sort of a consolidation of everything else into worship of Satan. That's what's coming.
It's interesting. We should probably talk about the state of the church in America right now, vis-a-vis the rising anti-Semitism we see all across the spectrum. This is not a puzzling thing, but it should get everybody's attention who follows the true and living God at this point. Something's going on in America. We've seen this rapid rise in anti-Semitism in the church, where people are following after this idea of Reconstructionism and Dominionism, kind of talking about Christianity along the way. But their idea is that we have to take over the world and reform the world until Christ comes back. That it blows eschatology right out of the water. So you see, the young generation, especially, they've fallen into this camp all of a sudden. Oh, we see why people are talking about Israel in a bad way, because they're just part of the problem at this point. We have to clean the world out, including them. And so when we get done with that, then Christ can come. Maybe it'll be 1,000 years from now. But this is dangerous philosophy. This invaded the church. I don't know where it's going to end. Maybe it won't end. I don't know. But what can we do to stem that tide? I don't know that either.
I did a couple of programs. I did an interview yesterday with Dumasani Washington. He's become a good friend. He did sort of a takedown of Tucker Carlson over a year and a half ago in Tablet Magazine, in an article called "The Arsonist." Tucker Carlson burns down the bridges between evangelicals and Jews, or something like that. And it's a master takedown, and he's been very good on that. And then I also did an interview with a guy named Steve, the tour guide. I know that sounds like what's he got to offer, but it was a very good talk about what's invading the MAGA right, the left-green alliance, and what's driving a lot of what we see in Candace and Tucker, which is, at least Candace, a desire to return to a pre-Vatican II Catholicism, where all Jews collectively were blamed for the death of Christ, not just a few. Yeah. Vatican II tried to change that, but they're trying to take that back. So you can find that on my YouTube channel. I think it's a very instructive thing, and I think this is a massive problem in the church. And I thought since October 7th, I thought the most divisive issue in the evangelical church till Jesus returns is the issue of Israel.
And I think with Trump, when we're talking about the tech bros, we're talking about all of these investments and all the things he's trying to do. He thinks he's going to be able to set America on course to have another 250 years of greatness, because he's been surrounded by either amillennialists or postmillennialists who are largely both anti-Semitic, even though he is not necessarily. He's still being influenced politically or geopolitically to just look at them like another country and not as a covenant nation with God, the only covenant nation with God. And so that does shape how he treats Israel at times. But it seems like all of the folks that are surrounding him, advising him, are either amillennial or postmillennial. There's hardly any pre-trib or premillennial type of leaders, with the exception of maybe like Huckabee. I don't know where Marco Rubio and those guys are, but he's got all these folks, or they're not Christian at all. They're atheist or agnostic or whatever. So they're not even thinking about eschatology. They're thinking the world's just going to keep plugging along. So he's thinking long term, like, well, how can I set America up for the next 100 years? Not realizing that, we're the last generation. So
very good point. Yeah.
Might be good for him to focus on getting through the midterms.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is a very definitive issue. And then there's J.D. Vance, I'm sure you guys have some opinions on him.
He's Catholic, so he's amillennial in his. If he has any eschatological position at all, it's going to be from an kind of an amillennial position, or maybe even perhaps a postmillennial. But it definitely will not be a premillennial. He's definitely thinking. He's not thinking like this is the last generation. He's thinking we've got another 500 years or whatever. So how do we set ourselves up for that?
Yeah. So I think JD, is a, boy, is he well spoken, very fast on his feet, very willing to
he's a
speak
lawyer.
his mind. But I think he's been mentored perfectly to be the next U.S. president. And if something were to happen to Trump, he'd slot in immediately, and it would probably accelerate, even more than what Trump has done so far. So he is a very interesting guy, and he's not the Antichrist or anything like that. But there's something about him that is so competent. I think that. Man,
you talking about JD Vance?
Yeah, he's been brought up in the system in order to play a very important role. I think he's been primed for a lot of things. We have yet to see where he's going to end up. It's just a personal feeling.
Mm-hmm. We know for sure that he was mentored by Peter Thiel in particular.
Yeah. Well,
for years.
That answer,
the only job he had out of college was working in cahoots with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel mentored him from the get-go, got him launched into the Senate in Ohio, and then he springboarded there into where he is now. But there was another guy named Blake Masters in Arizona. He did the same thing at the same time frame when he launched JD Vance. So we have Blake Masters here. He ran for the Senate with Thiel money. He failed. We sent him packing, but he's still here, and he's probably going to run for something in the future as well. This was Peter Thiel's strategy to launch somebody into high level and national politics where he could control the narrative at that point. And you say, what narrative that is that? And well, you study Peter Thiel and you find out what he's all about. You won't like it, especially from a Christian point of view. But remember, Curtis Yarvin is his house philosopher. So if he had an impact on JD Vance, you wouldn't hardly know it on the surface. But this is the smoothness of this kind of a transition. I wouldn't call him a Manchurian candidate necessarily, Blake Masters maybe, but he was a smooth talker as well. I met him in person, interviewed him before his first election attempt. Nice guy. He comes off very genteel, very informed, it seems like, but he has the heart of a snake, in my opinion. So, we'll see. Maybe somehow JD Vance is going to break free from Peter Thiel and become his own man. That's possible. I don't see it happening, however, because Peter Thiel would not like that to see his investment thrown in the trash. But I'm just saying.
So, okay, so let's shift to a little bit more on the technical side or the practical aspect of AI. So I am inundated with AI training videos. I'm seeing videos though, and this kind of, it's the blessing and the curse type thing, that I get these videos, use Adobe Firefly and create these videos. And I watch the guys do them, and then you can go, Firefly is free for the next couple of days. You can reproduce this stuff with their prompts in Firefly and create a video that might be a sketch of a train coming through, middle of town, like a light rail, and turn it into a video sketch. And it's really good. But then on the other side, so that's kind of good. But then I think, like, what about the people who used to work like crazy to produce this stuff? What's going to happen to them? Anybody have thoughts, Britt?
Yeah, it's displacement for sure.
Yeah, we've seen this in the past with technologies that come along and change things. There will be new jobs created, but this is part of the problem: is the exponential change that we're seeing is going to condense really into a small time frame all the change we saw of the last 200-300 years of the Industrial Revolution into a very small time frame. So people are going to have their lives upended. What the impact of this on the economy, and if you have mass layoffs, and I think that we're going to see that come about in due time. A lot of the predictions were a little bit too early for that. But many of those employees that then no longer have the ability to earn, they're going to be defaulting on their debt. And I think this plays right into what Patrick was saying about the next system is an asset-based system. What we're in now is a debt-based monetary system, and we're at the end of that right now. You look at the indebtedness of the nations that we see, and for instance, look at Japan. And Japan has a debt to GDP ratio of 266%. That's more than twice as worse as the United States. They've seen interest rates on Japanese government bonds go up to all-time highs recently. Within 2 years, we're going to see the interest on the Japanese national debt double. This is unsustainable. Math tells us this will end badly. When it does, that's very deflationary. And AI itself is deflationary. And the way that they're going to battle that is to print. And I think on the other side of that, we're going to see hyperinflation. And the only way out of that is going to be some sort of standard based on assets. And it leads right into what Patrick is saying. We have to, return to, say, a gold standard, but in this case, it would be blockchain, where the gold is warehoused somewhere linked to in a digital currency that can be divided up and traded around the world instantaneously, along with every other asset on the planet. So I think what we're seeing here is going to. There's a lot of people who have built their lives on the shifting sands of this world, and they're about to see their lives turned upside down by the technological change, the geopolitical change, all these things that are happening. And that's why it's essential for us to be sharing the gospel with as many people as possible and talking about these things. When we talk about these events that are coming, we're planting seeds with people that may not want to hear the gospel right now, but as they see these things take place and they remember that we told them that the Bible foretold it all, then at some point they're going to remember that we also told them that the Bible foretold the birth, the life, the death, and the resurrection of a Messiah, a Savior of the world. And all those prophecies were fulfilled in the life of Jesus of Nazareth. So go out there, plant seeds, because what's coming is going to be unbelievably disruptive. It's we've talked numerous times about the stadium and the eyedropper filling with water. And that last minute is when half the stadium fills up. And so this change is going to be very disruptive and sudden when it comes. And anybody that has not built their life upon the solid rock of Jesus Christ is going to find their world turned upside down.
Absolutely.
Well said, Britt.
Interesting in Revelation 18, which is the commercial Babylon, that I think what you just mentioned with assets, it seems like when you read it, it says And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. Merchandise of gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of precious wood, bronze, iron, marble, cinnamon, incense. Goes on down to, sheep, horses, chariots, bodies, and the souls of men. I wonder if all of those become tokenized in this mark of the beast system as assets.
Perfect. You got it. You nailed it right there. This is exactly on the table. Even now, the literature is describing that scenario. I can see it happen. It's not happening yet, but you can see where it's going to go in the future. Mm-hmm. At some point, the switch is going to be flipped. The souls of men. What does that mean? How do you trade souls of men? Is it like Monopoly? Do you have a card and it's your card, and somebody can take your card away from you and sell you to somebody else? You think of the possibility. This is a global system of slavery at that point. Slavery.
So what is the system that a guy like Tucker Carlson respects the most? Feudal system.
Feudal, yeah.
And do you remember a few years ago at World Economic Forum? I played the clips over and over again. Yuval Noah Harari was speaking. It was, I think, maybe his first appearance at Davos, but 2018, I think. And he made a very by the way, his educational track record, PhD, is in medieval history, the period of the feudal system. And he made a very interesting comment. He said, at least during and I'm paraphrasing, during the time of the lords of the manor, the serfs were able to provide something of value to the manor. They cleaned out the barn, they cleaned up the manure, they worked the fields. But he said, what are we going to do? And this is 8 years ago. What are we going to do when we have a whole bunch of people who have no economic value to give to society? It's kind of frightening.
Soylent Green.
Soylent Green. Let me give you the answer that Curtis Yarvin gave to us about this problem. He calls it benevolent genocide. Just bear with me for a second. I'm going to read you a quote out of his blog that he wrote. It's called Patchwork. He wrote this in 2008. He said, the best humane alternative to genocide I can think of is not to liquidate the wards, that would be us, either metaphorically or literally, but to virtualize them. A virtualized human is in permanent solitary confinement, waxed like a bee larva into a cell, which is sealed except for emergencies. This would drive him insane, except that the cell contains an immersive virtual reality interface, which allows him to experience a rich, fulfilling life in a completely imaginary world.
That's the Matrix.
That's the Matrix. This is what he wrote. This was his answer to solve the problem of getting rid of these useless eaters. Really crazy. I know.
Pete, did you put up a picture today of Maduro sort of suspended in carbon, frozen in carbon, sort of like Han Solo was in Star Wars?
Yeah.
Was that Maduro?
Yeah.
On the wall behind Trump in the Oval Office?
Oh, geez.
It's pretty funny.
We're a reverent group of guys for sure.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to show it to you on here.
I've got it. Hang on here. It's
Yeah. Geez.
there we go.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
There is some good AI stuff out there. I mean, I have to.
There you go.
admit.
There, this is it. Or maybe not. Maybe it's real.
Yeah, it's true. We haven't seen Maduro lately.
I just thought it was so funny. I was like, oh man.
So anyway, so Scott, you sent us an article. I'd like to talk about this before we go tonight. Is AI compatible with a biblical worldview? Why don't you start, and we'll let Britt and everybody else kind of weigh in on that.
So I did some research on a ministry organization called GLOO, GLOO. And they decided, and I like it that they did this, they tried to do a analysis of AI in the context of ministry. What is the relationship? What should be done? And they tried to create some policy framework for it and some benchmarks around it. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, honestly, because I've been, you know how I've been on this topic here, I thought it was very naive. I don't trust AI with a biblical worldview at all, period, because it's been trained to be, you know, what's that term used that Britt always talks about, but poly-religious, basically. It's trained on all the religious systems of the world. And as you begin to interact with it, it knows that you're from the US, you're likely to be Christian, begins responding that way. But if you are in a different part of the world, it will respond completely differently and give you a different worldview. Well, one of the biggest problems with AI is it's not deterministic. So that's a big, big problem. You know, the source of authority for our faith is the Bible. I know that there's different versions. I know there's different things like that. But the thing is, the Word of God is immutable. And if you ask it, you know, John 3:16, I think most of the time it would give you a response that would actually be correct, word for word correct. But when you understand the neural net and the weight algorithms and how AI basically does next token prediction, that is not deterministic. That's a mathematical probability assessment. And it could be influenced by conversations that have been previously in that chat, and then all of a sudden surprise somebody by miscontextualizing scripture. So I'm going to fix this, John. I've decided I'm going to write a program, and this is TBD here, all this, but it's going to be called Bible Bench. And I'm going to use the English King James Version, and I'm going to write a program that, which, by the way, I got from the American Bible Society. So it's the canon, right? I have the data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to interrogate LLMs to see if when it gives an answer with the scripture, if it aligns correctly, word for word, letter for letter, punctuation. And there are techniques you can do in data processing, which I happen to be very, very good at. And I'm going to score the accuracy of different models like Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, Grok, and others, so that we know as the body of Christ whether or not this hypothesis that so many people scoff at, oh, it doesn't do that. It knows. It was trained on it. It'll tell you the truth. No, I don't think so. And so I've determined the only way for me to help us as the body is to create an application. I've got a rough product requirements document. It'll be open source. It'll be free. I'll publish the Git repo for people. I'm going to contact the guys at Glue and talk to them about what I've found. Because I think it's time that we break this enamored view of what AI can do with regard to shortcuts and highlight more the dangers of how a large language model works. And I don't know when I'm going to have it done, but I'm trying to get it done, I think, by May.
So, Scott, my personal experience with that is very limited. So, but of course, that makes me an authority on it, right? I did have I was preaching one Sunday, and I went to AI on the passage. And I just thought I would, and I don't know, I think I might have been using Perplexity. And I said, give me a 30-minute sermon outline, and I gave them the passage. And within 2 seconds, I had an outline. And then I said, give me 20 PowerPoint slides. Another 2 seconds, I had PowerPoint slides. Now, my experience on that was I then went and checked, is this accurate or not? And it actually was not that bad. And my conclusion sort of was, well, if it's looking for other sermon outlines on that particular passage, you're not going to find sermon outlines and expeditional outlines from, junk that Rob Bell used to do. It's going to come maybe from a Calvary Chapel guy. Mm-hmm. So that was and so then I started looking, and it came from a Calvary Chapel pastor in California. And
well, consider this, John.
So I'm just saying so my conclusion was, well, maybe right now it's kind of okay, but that was over a year ago. So I'd be afraid to try it now.
Yeah, I think it lit a fire under my, so I'm going to do this. I'm very focused on trying to help the Watchman community actually understand what's going on with this. And I think my inspiration for this is Snitch Bench, which allows, that reports how an AI will react if it's told to act in the interest of humanity. And it will cheat. It'll notify the feds, and it will notify news agencies when it sees a medical violation, an ethics failure in a hypothesis. It's basically a test case and a test harness. This is not out in the wild. This is in a lab. And, the AI will gladly report you. Most of them are way over, 80, 90% of the time. Some are 100% of the time. It will notify the authorities. And what gets my interest about this is that I expect that AI policy, adherence will inform, like if you go to try to buy something that you're not allowed to do because of some DEI violation or something, carbon credit, whatever, you can't buy that vehicle because it's got the wrong emissions profile. You can't afford it. And I think that what'll happen, they're just not going to leave it there. Your credit card has been declined. I think what's going to happen is they'll notify the authorities and something will happen with your credit score. So I'm, very getting back to this idea of, I just want to know. And I'm kind of frustrated with people's love affair with using AI for biblical matters. And, I just want to do something about it. And I'm highly motivated right now to write this application, which will be up on our website. We could talk about it at some point in the future. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. And I want to say that I kind of use it as just like I would use a collection of commentaries when I'm researching a particular passage or something like that. I don't use them as the final word on it. So I view it as a tool, but I think it's increasingly going to become difficult.
Yeah, I'd like to, the product side of me goes nuts for this stuff because I'd love to have a user, anybody, anonymously. You don't have to sign up at all. It'll just be a tool. And the goal would be to allow anybody to ask a specific verse, a book, chapter, and verse. And on the backside, it would go interrogate all the models and score it. So the user could ask those questions, but I'll have test case results just like Snitchbench does, but in a biblical way. I'll do all 1,189 chapters. Every word, every syllable, punctuation mark, everything will be exactly scored to the byte. So I just want to know, because my gut says that there's a lot of corruption going on, but we don't know for sure. So I'm trying to take steps to really evaluate that in a very scientifically sound way. And my goal would be to write a white paper on this that I could be sharing more broadly as to the results of this finding and have it peer reviewed.
I think you're gonna find pay dirt. I really do.
Okay, so I want to shift. Thank you, Scott. Good points. Let's go here. So let's, Britt, you wrote this article about AI toys. Why isn't the church warning about this? Why don't you kind of summarize your thoughts on that, and we'll talk about it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, this is part of a series I'm doing on the dangers of AI that many people may not be aware of, that they need to be warned of. And one of those that's really come about in a serious way in the last few months is the release of AI toys, AI dolls, teddy bears, objects that will talk back to children and have conversations with them. And again, a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents may be initially may think these are harmless because they remember, Tickle Me Elmo or Teddy Ruxpin, these toys from the past that were really just pre-programmed with certain phrases that they would repeat over and over. But these are actually using large language models connected to the internet. And we can see some examples here with these toys, and they have eyes. So these are cameras that are scanning faces of children, retinas of children, storing this in a database. So you have all sorts of privacy concerns with that. And then the stated reason as well, so they can recognize the child and then talk back to the child. And they've had consumer groups that have looked at this, that have found where the toys will tell children where to find knives in the house, where to find matches and how to use them, have inappropriate conversations with children. And then you have to look at what are the long-term impacts of children forming relational bonds with their toys that are talking back to them, because they're not going to be able to distinguish that this is an algorithm. They're going to think this is real. I mean, we've already seen instances of adults that have formed romantic relationships with AI. One man that proposed to and married his AI, and he broke down in tears for 30 minutes at work when he found out that the AI was going to reach its character limit and its memory would be erased. And so imagine what's the impact on a child when the same thing happens. So this is a bad idea that we need to be warning people about, to stay away from this. Yesterday, I put out part 5 on this about AI afterlife products, which again is where people can build avatars that speak of their deceased relatives. And these are trained on the digital footprint of those deceased individuals, stories from their past, any information about them. Can even do voice cloning where the voice of the AI sounds exactly like the voice of the deceased person. This is just a high-tech version of calling forth spirits of the dead, which is called out as detestable in the eyes of the Lord in Deuteronomy 18. So again, warn people about this, because the most vulnerable among us, children and people who are grieving, are the ones who may find themselves unwittingly going down this, what turns out to be a very dark path.
Okay. So let me and I don't want this to go on too long, so I'll just raise one other issue, and that's kind of the censorship free speech issue. Well, let me go back to what Britt was just talking about first. Are you guys seeing a lot of AI clone videos circulating out there?
Yes.
Yes.
Totally. Sick of it.
Sometimes it's easy. For example, there's a historical realist guy named John Mersheimer. He's an extreme Jew hater, wrote the Israel Lobby, was one of the co-authors of that. Yeah. And I saw a video of him spouting his, it looked like John Mersheimer. It sounded like John Mersheimer. It had his mannerisms. And the only reason I knew that it was fake AI was because it sounded reasonable. You know what I mean? It didn't sound like the nutty stuff that he usually says. But then I've run into other people where they're taking like, there's a lady named Sarah Payne, P-A-I-N-E. She's a historian geopolitical historian at Harvard. And people have taken her lectures and then created videos. And the only reason I kind of said, well, this can't be a real person, because there was no pausing. There wasn't the usual way humans talk, that they might pause or clear their throat or anything. It was just this very articulate, but robotic thing. I don't know. It was very strange. Are you guys seeing this? And how do we deal with this? And how do you figure out that this is fake?
A great example of this is Julia McCoy. She is a AI enthusiast, a pro AI person, and she does a lot of these virtual reports. It's all automated, but she does a full, Julia persona. It looks like her, and then it talks like her, like you said, and she's got the story prepped.
My AI clone saved my business. I see it here.
If anyone wants to see what we're talking about here, go to Julia McCoy's YouTube channel.
You can find the instructions to make your own avatar if you want, and do your own videos.
Yes, you can.
She shares it.
God help us if John ever did that. I mean,
he'd be on every channel every day, 24/7.
Oh,
well, what a blessing that would be.
Well, Patrick, with your 14,000 web pages,
right?
You could do it too, man.
After I'm gone and you see videos show up for me, you'll know I was successful to create my own avatar, and I have the scripts already.
That's bad. But the implications.
How is that different from Through the Bible with J. Vernon McGee that they've been running for like 80 years now?
Exactly.
He's been, I don't know when he died. He had to die back 40 years ago, right?
Oh, a while, yeah.
And they keep rerunning, and somebody once said to me, Jay Vernon, he's preaching better than he ever did. Yeah, he's been dead for 20 years.
I think the dangers of this are very severe, and I think it sows confusion and hate. It's a great platform to disrupt and to inject chaos into the world. So this is a tool of the elites, of course, to sow division. And we haven't really seen great examples yet of manipulation that is so direct that it begins causing civil war concerns, where one side is up in arms. But AI is capable of doing that. Mm-hmm. And if you have this AI generative stuff going on, it could look like this person said this, and all of a sudden there's all this noise. And it could be very, very dangerous.
We've seen a prime example of that lately in the ability of, I believe, nation states to be able to use this to pursue and try to pursue an agenda and try to persuade the populace. So recently there's been basically a spike in the price of silver. And I received a number of communications from individuals that were like, did you see what this guy put out in this video? And is what he's saying true? And I go right to it, and I could tell just from looking at it that it was AI. The person was AI. And this stuff has really proliferated in the past 3 to 4 weeks. It's called Asian Guy, and it's all these videos are about silver, and they take snippets of what's said by other people who are experts in that market, blends them together. Again, Asian Guy, AG, that's periodic symbol for silver. So that's not by coincidence. And there is an agenda being pursued with this. And so 85-90% of what's coming out in these videos is true. It's based on these snippets taken from other people. And then there's pieces of an agenda inserted in there in order to try to nudge people to take certain actions. And I believe this is part of a power struggle, probably between China and the United States over this. It's unclear to me which is pushing this. I would think that it's probably likely the United States, since YouTube hasn't taken these down. But this one guy, who's AI created, it will put out 100 videos a day on 100 different channels, and they'll pop up all over the place.
Well, just imagine a quote open mic moment from the Situation Room, where Trump and Hegseth and other people are talking some kind of a narrative that sends markets tumbling. I mean, how do you stop that? Traders will look at this and they'll go, it's some big announcement, some conflict was being discussed, but it was all AI generated. And we haven't seen, a direct, that's what I mean by direct manipulation, where it's done to achieve a financial sudden shock that somebody has short sold ahead of time, right? Usually they would begin with a short, and when it's discovered that that it's a fake, then there's a rebound. They win on both sides of that financially. Mm-hmm. So I think great criminal manipulation is going to occur in this area in finances, and just wait. I think it's coming.
What do you think the Iranian regime will do? I mean, this is why it's hard to figure out what's going on in Iran, because there are videos, but are they? And so you start to question reality. You might be seeing videos of body bags, but is that just propaganda that somebody's putting out? It's concerning to me. And I mean, you see these protests, and it looks like a lot of people, but then is that an AI generated video of people out protesting?
I seem to remember that the old school way of doing it, and there was a body bag collected by Hamas giving just for propaganda purposes. But after the camera was moved away, it unzipped and there was a kid that got out.
Right.
And they don't do that anymore.
They don't need to.
They'll do generative AI now. It's all real. It looks so real now,
I have to tell you my story. When I had a stroke 3 years ago, I'm really thankful I recovered pretty much. But one of the things that I heard from the Lord about, this is very personal. I can't say other than that. I think the Lord impressed on me an idea, a concept that I've spoken about it a lot in the interim, and that is the collapse of reality. At that point was ahead. I didn't really see it that way before, but the Lord showed me there was going to be a collapse of reality at some point in the future where many people, if not most people, are trapped in a state of psychosis when they can't tell what's true or not true.
Yeah.
We see now with all these reports coming out, this is exactly what's happened. It's in the literature now, in psychological studies, that AI psychosis is a thing now, where people are getting so detached from reality. Maybe they see things that they're not real. They hear things that they get faked out, whatever. And they move into this this area of AI psychosis, where they can't tell what's real and what's not. When a person is in that state, they're so easily manipulated because they have no touchstone for reality at all. We see this happening, I think, all over the world, especially with these deep fakes. That's just part of it, but your eyes don't lie to you. If you see it with your eyes and you get convinced that that's real, you can't unsee it at that point. This is going to be, going forward, this is going to be worse and worse, I think, as time goes on. This is so important for Christians to understand where reality is. It's based on God first,
Right.
the Bible second, and what you know about Christ in the first place, how he's treated you and your Christian life. Has he, in other words, has he let you down, or has he been faithful to you? This is the reality of the universe that Christians need to be anchored to. Anything else is just nonsense at this point.
Shifting sand.
And if you get sucked into that system, and Christians can be subject to AI psychosis as well. If you get sucked into that system, you'll lose your orientation, and anything or nothing will make sense to you at that point. This is
and that's why, Patrick, I want to do this Bible bench, because if we can't rely on the Word of God, at least online, or coming through a chatbot or something like that, that anchor could even be manipulated. That's what I'm scared of.
Yes. There's studies already that have been released, scientific studies. I just posted one recently on Technocracy News about how AI-generated news influences your opinions and your views on life. And it was so subtle that people didn't even sense there was a change at all. When they consumed a news story or whatever based on some biased LLM that spit out very normal sounding stuff, and you consume that, all of a sudden your view begins to shift their way. This has been proven now, and for news at least. How much more for people looking for answers about God's word in AI programs?
Right.
It's going to lead you astray every single time.
That's
and it might be so subtle that you can't even tell it's trying
Preach
to
it
get to you.
Yeah, if our audience doesn't realize our grave concern, Britt has taken a lion share of the warning process right now with AI companions, Joe Hawkins, myself, others, Patrick, and Pete. Everyone's jumping on this because we see it so clearly right now. And if you wonder why, start backfilling some of the articles that we've written on our Substacks and elsewhere, and you'll see it after that. It's just so subtle, and yet I think we have to be extremely cautious about it. Britt, thank you again for your 5-part series that you did. It's very, very good.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe we should go around the horn here, and I John Haller, certified that this is the real John Haller, not an AI clone. If I show up with a head of hair like Pete Garcia or sometime some week, then we'll know that maybe there's something funny business going on.
I'm the digital clone of Pete Garcia.
Yeah. So the background may be fake, but it's the real. Do you think I would make myself look like this if I? Seriously,
Yeah, good.
Come on.
Yeah.
PM looks at me and sees a young Harrison Ford, but nobody else. So I'm sure that's anyway. So look, why don't we wrap this up? Just everybody, we'll go around the horn, let everybody give a final thought, and then we'll say goodnight. So let's start with Pete.
All right. A couple of years ago, I don't know if you guys remember that montage where they had all the newscasters, and you start off with one newscaster and he's saying something, and the next one is a lady saying something, and then you have like 20 pictures of all these newscasters from all over the U.S. all saying the exact same thing verbatim, and that was before AI. You know, the propaganda, the message is there. The system, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, is pushing out a narrative for people to obey and fall in line. That is only going to escalate on steroids with AI, and anything online is going to be increasingly hard to tell what's real and not what's real and what's not real. So this is where exercising discernment increasingly becomes not a novelty or not something that you exercise every once in a while. You're going to have to use it 24/7. So start sharpening up now, because I mean, it's going to get harder and harder. And as social media is still out there passing news or sharing news of things that may or may not have happened, I mean, you're going to have to start checking everything 2 to 3 times from different sources to see if it's legit or not anymore. And, you know, also not getting super sensational about some breaking news that somebody shared on Instagram or Facebook or X or whatever. Take a deep breath, validate it, make sure that it's legit, because it's also your testimony. And if you're that kind of person that's always just forwarding on the latest and greatest, and you don't exercise that discernment, it catches all of us. It'll catch all of us at times. But we need to do our best, because our credibility with the unbelieving world is at stake as well. We need to be good sources of information that our lost brothers and sisters out there can come to when things start to fall apart. And so they need to look at each of us as a fountain of discernment and good godly wisdom and understanding and level-headedness as the world keeps becoming more and more chaotic. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Britt?
Yeah, I agree. Tying into that with what Patrick was just saying about there's so much confusion by people and disorientation. I mean, similar to a pilot that loses sight of their instrumentation. They don't know if it's up or down, left or right. And that's why it's so important for people to be grounded in the Word of God every single day. Have physical copies of the Bible. Be reading those every single day. Every piece of information that you take in, you need to filter it through what the Bible says. And if it's opposite of what the Bible says, you need to throw out those ideas. And know that the Bible, you can count on that as true. That is the foundation. That's what you can anchor yourself to in these times where anyone that's not doing that, they really don't know what's true and what's not. But we can know certain things that are true, and that's what we read in the Word of God. So be in it every single day.
Okay, Scott. Thank you, Britt.
I agree with Pete and Britt. You know, guys, we're in this almost a surreal time of our lives right now. I look at what's going on, and even recently, just thinking about AI in space and all that stuff, and what the potential outcomes of the Pax Silica is, and the beast system being constructed all around us right now. And the concern about, I think, what's happening is so far out of our control that it makes me, even for myself, wonder, how do I protect my heart, and how do I protect my mental sanity when I'm seeing all this stuff? And I think that emotional resilience is really, really important. And having rest, I struggle with rest. I struggle with all that stuff because I'm, constantly thinking and working and waking up at 2 a.m. or whatever it is. And it's just crazy. but there's a drive that we should have now. We are seeing biblical things that are even atheists. That's the incredible thing. Atheists are starting to get it more than people in the church, honestly. And if that isn't a rebuke of the church, I don't know what is, actually. So a lot of people are asking questions. So my recommendation is stay in fellowship. Do not, just isolate yourself. I know it's hard to find a church. It doesn't have to preach eschatology. It just has to be healthy as can be. That's relative. I know it's frustrating that it can't be perfect, but it's increasingly difficult to do that. And I think that the other thing is be as prepared as we can be. There are steps that we can take today. Britt talks about those things often. Be prepared. Bible warns us to, if you see danger coming, you should be prepared. So I think the greatest thing we need to do is to reach out to people and to help them understand, to connect the dots, to be there, to pray with people and to listen and to counsel them to the best of our ability. So this is kind of how we have to help the walking wounded. I think the church is kind of in two camps. There's those that don't know and they seem fine. And there's those that are wounded. They're limping. They're agonizing for the Lord to come back. And I would be among that group, actually. Come on, Lord, let's go. But the Lord doesn't want any to perish. So I understand that. But it's like we have work to do, and our job isn't done until it's decided for us through the rapture. Titus 2:13. Thank you, Jesus, for that. And, at that point, it's all good. That's when I rest. I'm not resting now. I'm working very, very hard. And I just think we all should be in taking these type of things into our heart, being highly motivated for outreach and support for others right now.
Thank you, Scott. Patrick?
Ditto to all of that stuff. Seriously. I won't repeat it, but I'll give you a tip. There's a trend going on right now from some people who are fed up with AI and all the nonsense and the media and the propaganda and everything. There's a trend where you establish a room in your house as a technology-free room. And you go and spend at least 1 hour or 2 hours a day in the technology-free room. That means no phones, no computers, nothing, no AI bots. And you consider whatever you do at that time, that's your business. A good time to study the Bible for sure. But I'm just saying there's a trend. I can see it's going to catch on. I think if people want to maintain their sanity, they're going to have that technology-free time. This is something you can do immediately, probably, if you wanted to. Just say, I'm going to shut everything down and just going to sit in a chair and stare at the ceiling. Even you might find you've had some interesting insights from the Lord, as especially. Otherwise, I'll always end with my exhortation these days. I say this all the time. We need to be Christians. We need to be statesmen. We need to be ambassadors for Christ. And that carries with it a responsibility to know what you're talking about in the first place. You can't blow smoke to people and think you're going to help them. We should be, of all people, we should be the statesmen of the Christian world who can be the beacon of light from people who are just getting overwhelmed with circumstances in the world. We're at this point. What would happen if your house burned down? I know my house has never burned down, but I know people that had that experience. If you lost everything in a fire and you didn't have anything left, no food, no clothes, nothing. It was just you and the Lord. which direction would you travel? East, south, north, whatever. It's just you and the Lord now. What would you do if you found yourself in that position? Well, this might be the case in the future where Christians just lose everything important in the world. And now the question will be, will we still be statesmen fulfilling our God-given role to enlighten the world what just happened? You see, it's going to be a brave new world. There's going to be trouble down the line, but we have to be on God's side in this, because if we're not, what's the alternative? We have believed the living God, not a pile of rock somewhere. So, he will be faithful to us to the end. I'm totally convinced of that. I've been a Christian over 50 years now. He's never, ever let me down one time in my whole life. I've had hard times, but, he's led me through. He's been faithful to me, and I know he's going to be faithful to me in the future as well. I don't care what happens at this point. He will be faithful to me. You have to, this is an idea, you have to cultivate this, not this idea in your mind. Is he faithful to you or not? He's just because you have a lot of stuff, that doesn't mean necessarily he's been faithful to you. You'll find out when the going gets tough, just how faithful he is to you. This is an opportunity for all of us Christians to be just shining forth the gospel of Jesus Christ. Amen. I really believe it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and we always need to remember that we're in a pretty deep spiritual battle here as we seem to be rocketing towards the end times, and we see all these things happening. So I want to thank Britt, Scott, Patrick, and Pete. We'll do this again, and we trying to do them once a month. So watch for that. Also, go to everybody's YouTube channels, subscribe, like, share, hit that little notification bell, leave a comment, a nice comment. No, just leave a comment, and that'll help us on the algorithms that seem to govern our lives now. So anyway, guys, thanks so much. I really do, as I've said before, I appreciate all you guys a lot. And I appreciate the camaraderie that we have and the way we can discuss these things and even disagree agreeably. So everybody, thanks for listening, and we appreciate it. And we will see you the next time. And guys, I'll say goodbye to you on the other side. Good night, everybody.
God bless.
God bless.